morning, everyone. It's really great to be here today, and DairyNZ has been a supporter of the Rural Leaders Trust for a good number of years now, and it's just great to see people come into the programs that they have on offer and really grow and develop as they go through and go on to lead in their own farming businesses, but in the wider community. So you're fantastic to be here, and you're in for a treat because we have two really passionate people here that I'm certainly excited to be having a chat with today. Right, and now we're going high country farming, and that beautiful image I have in my head of Hamish and his farm team working in a beautiful environment at the top of the South Island. So welcome, Hamish. Really great to have you here today, and look, I am so looking forward to having a chat with you because I know this topic of future farm workplaces is hugely relevant right now, especially as we look to perhaps some changes in our workforce over the next few years as a result of COVID. Now, Hamish, I know you've got quite a personal story around what led you to this topic and what got you interested in this. Do you want to give us a little bit of introduction of how this all came about for you?
Yeah, hi Jenny, thank you for that introduction. And firstly, just before I start, well done Corrigan, it's great to see follow your journey and see the work that you've done and know that it's starting to gather some real momentum. One of the comments was we're just adding to the work and progressing the conversation, and I think you've hit on one that's really identified and needs further work. So good work, and thank you. And thank you to all of those participants that are joining us. It's not as how I'd planned to get a Nuffield presentation, but in this current time it's about learning to adapt and change, and that's exactly as we are. So to start on my topic, it used to be high country properties like ours had a stream of single shepherds lining up to take on and gain experience. And that romantic and nostalgic view of the high country was something that we just never had to deal with. In New Zealand, the incentive of owning land is becoming unsustainable unattainable for many. And the next generation of staff and employees are far more concerned with finding a better work-life balance. And in today's competitive environment, they're focused on growth and development and are much quicker to move on if they're not getting what they want out of a job. So with staff such a crucial part of our business, it focused me on how do we create the best environment on farm rather than taking an outward look and blaming others for that situation. And sorry, just to keep going, that started for me on a very personal note. Most likely in 4 or 5 years ago in the Marlborough North Canterbury drought, I exhausted myself to a point of depression trying to keep staff and friends and family around me going. And the pressure of just like we're sitting in now with the current environment is very real and relevant. And so I thought I was pretty used to handling these sorts of events. I've played a large amount of competitive sport and studied at a top university, but I wasn't prepared to handle that emotional situation, as we've heard earlier with Corrigan. So I was under pressure and I wasn't able to handle that. And it focused me on how we could better, when I reached that emotional breaking point, how we could better understand and work that. And so then I focused around our team and what that might be. In the very personal journey of learning that is, and then the Nuffield journey of travelling abroad and the opportunity to see and visit and see businesses has grown and built my thinking there. So
yeah, I think, Hamish, when you've got a very personal connection to a topic, it brings a realness to what you are setting out to explore, and you're in a much better position to really pick out the key points and observe what others are doing. So tell us a bit about your travels, where you went, and what were the things that stood out?
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I get the sense that there's a real change or a awakening to the changes of an aging population, increased automation, and most importantly, changing values and expectations of the different populations and generation. And the opportunity to get out and look at businesses outside of agriculture was the one that was really, really interesting. And I know that, leaders of all of you as leaders in your various fields understand that teams are at the heart of any successful workplace. And they're the key to creating engaged and motivated employees, as belonging is essential for human nature. Throughout life, we're schooled and trained and paid as individuals, but little thought, and especially on farm, is given to how we work together. And I've discovered that that's the key to success for businesses. So some real thought around how we create these teams and how they effectively work together.
And when you went around and visited different places, I think you were able to kind of pull together a few key things. I think you've got like 4 key things which you've come up with, which you think you're pretty confident are really important. And I know because you've tested some of this out, that are really important to growing those teams. Do you want to take us through those 4 things?
Thanks, Jenny. Very good to lead in. So as I say, teams for me, in my opinion, are the key. And how teams work together make all of the difference. So rather than who's on the team. And so the 4 key elements that I think lead to making an effective team. And firstly, it all hinges on awareness. Those teams that displayed high levels of awareness, self-awareness, and then team awareness of each other, interacted with each other, managed tension more effectively. There are many ways to develop that self-awareness, and that's not the aim of what I want to talk about, but that they'd all spent time doing that together was what I've seen. The second element was this clear roles and expectations, which is about more than the job descriptions that come with a role or a standard on farm. I assume they're core to anyone's role. It's about knowing the skills and utilising the talents that members bring to a team that help that to function well. And so it's harnessing the different roles that happen within a team rather than, the third and most crucial element that I've discovered that in influencing effectiveness is this group held belief that the team is safe for personal risk taking. It's termed psychological safety, but it's the ability to bring your whole self to work. Ask questions, share ideas, and voice concerns if something isn't right. And when you get all 3 of those together, so that one's crucial because it's a silent killer. If you never know if it's too late until someone's too scared to speak up.
Yeah.
And when you get all 3 of those things right, trust and dependability occur, which operate in a self-fulfilling cycle, which leads to a mutual accountability of the group rather than individually, and that is when the team goes above and beyond in tough times. And so
that's a look, I think it's a wonderful hello.
I'm Jago. Sorry,
He's one of your team. That's all right. Hi.
Hello, Jago. You say hi, but you have
hello.
Hi. Thanks, mate. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. That's absolutely fine. She's fine. She's part of your team, I'm sure. Part of your team. Look, those things are pretty, shall I say, advanced concepts for most farm teams. So how in your experience, how do we start to even go near some of that stuff to bring it into to make it real, to bring it into farms?
Yeah. I think, how do we start? Where do we go? You're dead right. They are high level elements of things. And I think individually as farmers, we're used to solving our own problems, and this old adage of leading from the front is a big part of that. And so leading into that, I think there are 4 elements that go along with effective teams. So teams are made up of effective teams do have those 4 elements, and then there are 4 things that they do feedback really well, leadership of those, and so the processes they engage, and then culture and values are also important in that example. But if I go back into my travels a little bit and help explain it, I realized that spending time on the west coast of America, in the Silicon Valley, I got the opportunity to spend time with tech companies and computer game developers, and I was struck by how important feedback is to these firms, and how they've made it such a core part of their business. And so a couple I met working for Congregate designing computer games explained to me how feedback is used to keep people focused, gamers focused, engaged, and even addicted, to a point that they know the progress towards an end goal. They get constant updates on location, their power remaining inventory. And when you combine that amount of feedback with the feedback in today's world through social media, instant answers through Google, and the way our schooling system's changed, when we compare that on farm to the constant nature, I think that we as farmers, we have to get better at improving and understanding that feedback element. We're lucky if it's a gruff expression or a 6-monthly or an annual performance review before we know where our employees go. So that's one part of it.
Yeah, and I think that thing, just bringing, so you've got you've got self-awareness, team roles, psychological safety, all leading to trust, and then you've got those other 4 elements which really enhance the team, in particular the feedback. Can you kind of give us a sense of how farmers can make a start? So just take feedback, for example. How do you sort of set yourself up to be able to start doing that well?
Feedback is a really interesting thing, because you've got to be conscious of the person receiving at the time. How do I'm a little bit lost here. Sorry.
That's fine. The maybe an example when you saw feedback being given really well, when you were at the gaming organisation, and the Crusaders. That's another. I know you visited the Crusaders, and they had some. Talk about having these examples right under our noses. Corrigan had the same example. Similar sort of situation with the All Blacks. So, what did you learn when you had some interaction with the Crusaders?
Yeah, again, we talk about a successful franchise doing wonderful things. They have the ability to take rough and relative unknown people, and then the most successful Super Rugby franchise in the country, having won back-to-back titles on a couple of occasions. And I was struck with the Crusaders in my time there that by the work that they do, creating awareness together. They even they have this funny thing where they refer to players by the colour of their dot. They're a red, blue, or a particular dot based on the way that they learn. Some are kinesthetic learning, some are learning by doing, and some are more visual sort of. So coming back to they'd spent time building awareness of each other, and then building awareness so that they could better get their message across, and that builds on that point that I was making earlier around those teams that had spent time building awareness together were more effective. The Crusaders were also a great example because they're really, really strong in their culture and the values that they have. And I recognise that culture and values is something that people talk about often, and everyone says they have a great cultural values, but the thing that I noticed with the Crusaders was their ability to make what they believe and have everybody buy into what it is. For example, I walked through their changing room, when I was spending some time with them, and I noticed they had on their wall a set of values that would be akin to any Super Rugby franchise in the country, the values of most businesses, but their ability to make those real and for players that buy into being a crusader and stand up was quite significant, and is proven in their success. And so when I dug deeper into how they were able to achieve that and asked questions around, the Crusaders culture, I uncovered that it was really around the time that they spend each year working out what that looks, sounds, and feels like, and turning that behaviour into actual things that are tangible rather than just a word. And the fact that they do that, and a story I was told by Reuben Thorne around the fact that they'd been Super Rugby champions 3 years in a row, and the players were there was a large number of All Blacks in that team, and they were in the 2009 or 2010. A lot of them had been on an end-of-year tour to Europe, and they came back and they decided that they needed to shortcut their pre-season. And the same team as the previous 3 years, and they had a heavy workload. That year they came 10th out of 12. Following on from that, the year after, they were conscious that they really needed to go back and make sure that they had their proper pre-season. Same thing, end-of-year tour, it didn't occur, and they came back, and when they consciously built on what that looked, sounds, and felt like, that year they went on and made it was the fourth time they won the title. So they were 3 in a row, 8-9, 7-8-9, 10th out of 1, and then they won again. And it illustrated to me, even great teams are still building this, and while it wasn't the reason that they didn't win that year, they realised the importance and what it meant, and the subtle results were in a different year.
Yeah, and I think it illustrates the, we just see the result. We see the outcome. Same with farming. We see the result, but there's a whole lot of work that goes on in behind. And what I'm hearing you say is the importance of putting the effort into building the team that really is going to help deliver the result. So just bringing it back to farming then, how can we relate some of this into the way we farm and the way we build our teams, which are kind of different, really, aren't they? But the same in many respects.
Yeah, I agree. So often, you're dead right. This is all about agriculture and how we do it for farm teams. And what the key message I'm trying to get across is actually spending time building awareness, understanding the roles that teams have, the people have within our teams. It's worth the effort, and so often on farm, there's so many things going on and it's busy that we don't take that time to stop and understand and spend time working on how we work together, because ultimately at the end of this, how we work together is the most important part in creating the right environment on farm. And that unity of what comes with takes discipline. So understanding that discipline and working together is ultimately what makes our farm teams successful.
Yeah, that's well said, Hamish. Look, we've got some questions firing in here. Richard, here's a question for you, Hamish. Hamish, a question from Richard. What are the 2 or 3 things you've implemented in your business based on your studies, and what's been the results?
Hi, Richard. Thank you for that. The Nuffield journey for me started 4 or 5 years ago, 18 months ago. But my own personal journey and our journey as a team started well before that. When identifying that we were struggling, that our businesses weren't as attractive, we went about creating trying to create the best environment on farm that we could. And so we started by building awareness together. We did a thing called Tetramap, and have been coached through that with somebody. So, and understanding how different personalities, the detail that people like and things has been huge. To testament to that, I'm sitting in our office, farm office, while we're weaning 550 cows and calves today, and our team is out there doing that. And I wouldn't have thought that I was ever in a position to be giving a webinar while one of the most important annual events of our farm business is happening. So that is testament to the results of what we've achieved. But you started by building awareness with each of those members and giving them the encouragement to grow it from there.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic example, Hamish. I've got some more questions here from Victor. On the journey to self and team awareness, would you agree that farmers need to be people managers first and farmers second?
Yeah, that's a really important one. One of the things, the key parts of things that I've learned this year is really around leadership. And to answer that question, our traditionally as farmers, we've been leaders from the front. That's been our model of leadership. It's been the one that's been respected. But I think now it's more and more about managing people and facilitating and coaching our staff and employees to solve their own problems. And that's a different skill set that's been required. And so the question, they're different skills that we need to learn and understand as people, especially trying to engage a younger generation of employees who have grown up being taught to solve their own problems and through the style of education and the way things are happening. And people are independent, and we've encouraged them to be independent. So when we start dictating and solving problems as people, we very quickly turn them, as leaders, we very quickly turn off those employees. So yeah, managing people is the key part to engaging teams.
Yep, it's like the sixth sense, isn't it? A real important one. Okay, here's a question. How do you make individuals in your team feel psychologically safe? That's quite a tricky one, isn't it? How do you do that?
Geez, I don't know, and I don't get it right all the time. But it's about your own awareness, our own self-awareness. So building awareness with each other, and then maybe one of the things that we've done is have a kind of a rules of engagement. And the key thing around that rules of engagement, it's a term, I don't mean it to sound like that, but just 2 or 3 points that we've got which represent what our values are, and then what they be, and a little bit of a kind of team tactics. So if people recognize that I'm under stress or whatever, that's okay, but they have a tool that allows them that to acknowledge it with me, and then the timing. And so for them to sort of check in that I need that time, we have basically a 10-minute rule, deal with it and dump it. Or if you've got a problem or something, it's first checking whether now's the right time, so that we're not getting caught up with other emotions that are being dealt with at that same time. So yeah, and each of those teams have to, when you engage teams and ask them they come up with their own rules rather than me deciding what's best for our team. So that's all been part of our team development over the last 4 or 5 years.
I think it's really powerful, Hamish. Thanks for that. Really powerful that you've started off with a very personal kind of experience, and then been able to go and learn, and then bring that back and to understand, and sort of have some quite good clarity around the important things. And now you're actually trying it out with your own teams. It's the best way for us all to learn, is to have someone who's living and breathing this. So yeah, well done for that.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to have had that opportunity to recognise the trends that you see in other parts of the world and other businesses, and then the challenge to make those relatable back to us on farm and how they're happening and occurring. And especially, as I say, like game developers or healthcare in the Netherlands, or even not close to home, our Crusaders example. When you stop and look at some of those examples and then relate them to our farm businesses, some of them seem large jumps, but they happen and occur within our farm teams, and so to be able to learn and grow and develop from what they're doing is pretty unique and exciting.
It's awesome. People are really loving the examples that you're giving from what you've learnt with the Crusaders, Hamish. And what can you do on the farm to replicate the cultural values and team culture as demonstrated by the Crusaders? So I guess what's one thing that you saw there that you can try and replicate?
I think anybody can. We can all work out what our cultures and values are. But it's how you make those things become a reality, and how they become lived and ingrained. And when you get that stuff right within your team, that's what creates the unity in the way that what that means. So one of the examples with our team, we've created what we think are our values. But when we, as part of the process we have gone through, what does that look like when we're doing it well? What does it look like when we're doing it exceptional? And what does it look like when we're exceeding expectations? And I'm just looking up on our wall. One of our values is stand together and celebrate success. So we went through with our team and said, well, what does it look like that when we're standing together? And, that might have been just, well, look, we're stopping for morning tea at least a couple of times together just to stop and have a chat. What does it look like when we're doing that well? And then what does it look like when we're exceeding those expectations? And so, it started with describing what stand together meant. That was like, and then it's about building that process and turning it into, something that actually is tangible that people can look at and share. And because everybody has a different interpretation of a word, but when you really draw out what that means to each other, then you iron out where the kinks are, and then you get real alignment, and that makes. I
don't seem to see any more coming in, so this is the last chance for questions, everybody.
Hamish, I think, is putting his hand up.
Hamish is putting his hand up. Okay, go Hamish.
Yeah, just
sorry about that.
One more thing to say. I think neither of us have all of the answers to this. We've studied it, seen it, and spent a lot of time in these topics, but we're by no means the experts, and especially in doing it ourselves. All the aim of the exercise is to progress the conversation and identify, for me, the opportunity that our farm teams have in creating a real engaging environment, and especially in the current situation where there's potential for more people to be they're changing with the COVID situation. And I think Corrigan is also progressing the conversation around, look, we're doing well, but here's a great opportunity for us to extend our thinking and our knowledge and understanding as farmers to deal with these pressure situations, because they're not going to go away.
Yeah, and I think sorry.
No, you're right.
You finish off.
The aim of our exercise was both just to further the conversation around the importance of these ideas.
And I think you've both. It's probably a nice place to. Oh no, we've got another question here, but I'm just going to say that you've issued a nice challenge. You've introduced these topics. You've given us some quite deep thinking. You've been able to turn them into some practical examples. And I guess the challenge is now to all of us, many of whom are on this call who will be, leaders in their own right, to be able to pick up this challenge and think about it and look at how we can kind of grow those skills and integrate that into farming. Right, I'm going to do one check. Both speakers have touched on the soft skills of business. They highlight how important it is. Do we spend enough time learning them? I think there might be an answer to that one from both of you. May have the same answer. There we go.
No,
I agree. And typically as farmers, we're focused on the production and the things that we can control, but we all know, and everybody talks around people as being the key part of our businesses, and so time spent specifically on those skills is what we're both suggesting is important.
Give us a little wrap up, and I really would like to thank both Hamish. I've just enjoyed fascinating talking to both of you. Well done on great pieces of work, and then on sharing them with a wider audience. So yeah, well done, and thanks so much for taking the time. I'll now hand back to Chris, who's going to give us a wrap and sign us off.
So Hamish and Corrigan, thank you both very much for your insights, and ladies and gentlemen, for joining us from around the world in a number of cases. There's a saying in New Zealand that goes, "He aha te mea nui o te au, hei tangata, hei tangata, hei tangata." And it comes from an old Māori chief who, when asked what was the most important thing in the world, he answered, "It is the people, it is the people, it is the people." And I think really just touching on that last question, gentlemen, you've highlighted the importance, the X factor in all of our businesses in terms of focusing on the people, and actually it's not even soft skills necessarily, but it's smart skills. And if we can really zero in on that, we can multiply our impact, which is what leadership is all about. But equally, as farmers and growers and agribusiness people, I think if we were asked that question that the old Māori chief was asked, we would pretty quickly follow it up with it's our environment as well as being equally important. And so we're delighted, looking forward now to invite all of you to join us again on Tuesday the 26th of May, where we will have two scholars presenting on our environment. Jenny, thank you all very much for your contribution today. We'd also like to thank our other strategic partners, but particularly DairyNZ for facilitating today. Hamish, Corrigan, well done, gentlemen. Thank you very much.